11 years. Think about that. Multiple courts spanning 3 different states, billions of dollars potentially hanging in the balance, reputation-wise for, one of music's biggest names. This legal fight just wouldn't quit. And the question everyone kept asking for, like over a decade, is Shawn Carter, Jay-Z, the biological father of Rymir Satterthwaite? For so long, the answer seemed buried under, sealed documents and just endless legal delays. But it's finally over. Not, interestingly, with a DNA test like everyone expected or some massive payout. Nope. It ended with a judge's signature in California. A final, decisive move that slammed the door shut on this epic legal battle.
Welcome to Starscope Report. I'm your host, and each week we dive headfirst into the biggest Hollywood dramas, music industry shakeups, and those viral scandals you can't stop hearing about. We go way beyond the headlines.
And today, we're doing exactly that. A real deep dive into how this long paternity case against Shawn Carter finally reached its legal conclusion. We've looked at the sources tracking this incredibly twisted history, and we're zeroing in on that last kind of desperate play the plaintiffs made in 2025, those 2 California lawsuits, and the legal maneuver that ultimately led to the final dismissal, the checkmate, really.
Okay, let's definitely unpack this, because you really can't grasp the ending without knowing where it all started. And it started way back, 1992. It all hinges on an affidavit, right? A sworn statement. What was the core claim there?
Yeah, absolutely. The entire thing rests on claims made by Rymir Satterthwaite's late mother, Wanda Satterthwaite. Before she passed, she provided this sworn document. It alleged she met Shawn Carter back in 1992.
And here's where it gets, explosive and, deeply uncomfortable for Carter's side publicly. The really shocking detail in that affidavit: Wanda stated she was only 16 years old at the time of the alleged conception. Shawn Carter was 22. Rymir was born the next year, July 93.
Right. And that age difference became a sort of strategic tool for the plaintiffs over the years. They definitely used it to paint a certain picture in public discussions. It suggested Carter's alleged resistance to a DNA test wasn't just about paternity or money, but maybe about hiding something much more sensitive, potentially a statutory crime. Though, it's crucial to note, the statute of limitations on any such crime ran out many years ago. Still, the implication lingered.
Yeah, it certainly creates a powerful narrative, right? A strong motive for what the plaintiffs kept calling, systemic legal evasion, dodging the truth.
It does frame it that way. But interestingly, the actual legal runway for Rymir to actively pursue Carter only really cleared up much later, around 2010. That's when another man, Robert Graves, who was Rymir's mother's boyfriend at the time, was officially ruled out as the father through a DNA test. So once Graves was out of the picture, Rymir could legally focus the paternity claim entirely on Carter.
So we're talking, 15 years of active legal battles after that, moving through different states, different courts. And through all that time, Rymir Satterthwaite, his public message seemed pretty consistent.
Yes, remarkably so.
Yeah.
Despite the, potentially massive financial stakes involved if paternity was established, he always maintained this very specific public position. Even as recently as late 2024 in a Daily Mail interview, he's quoted saying, "I don't want any money, I just want the truth." That stated desire for just an answer, that seemed to be the driving force behind the whole campaign.
It's just such a bitter, long fight, and defined by these 2 totally opposite stories, right? The plaintiff saying Carter used his money and power to basically cheat the system, and the defense saying, no, this is just harassment. Decades of it.
Exactly. And that clash eventually led to this huge tactical shift across the country. It's fascinating, actually, how the courts in New Jersey eventually kind of backed the plaintiffs into a corner, forcing them to try this pretty dramatic legal pivot.
Okay, that definitely sounds like a move you make when your options are running out. A bit desperate, maybe. All right, we need to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll dig into that crucial New Jersey ruling, the one that basically shut down the paternity case there and forced this whole fight out to California. Stay with us.
And we're back on Starscope Report. Before the break, we set up these 2 conflicting narratives. You had the plaintiff's Rymir Satterthwaite and his godmother, Lillie Coley, who was also his former legal guardian, arguing Carter committed, quote, fraud upon multiple courts, basically using his wealth to shut down the paternity claim.
Right. And then you had Carter's legal team hitting back hard, consistently calling the whole thing a decades-long campaign of harassment built on, quote, fabricated allegation. And they kept using this specific legal term, vexatious litigation.
Vexatious litigation. Okay,
Right.
Break that down for us non-lawyers. What does that actually mean in plain English? Basically, it means the court is saying, look, you keep bringing the same arguments, the same claims over and over again, and you're essentially wasting the court's time and resources. It implies the lawsuits lack merit, and are intended to harass. And the New Jersey court, it seems, eventually agreed with that assessment. Which brings us to that critical turning point you mentioned, the one that explains the California move.
Now, Carter's team often talked about a contempt order, but digging into the actual court records, our sources show it was slightly different, more specific than just contempt.
That's correct. The key ruling came in 2022 in New Jersey. It didn't actually hold them in contempt in the traditional sense, like fines or jail time. Instead, the court order specifically barred Satterthwaite and Coley from filing new lawsuits in New Jersey without obtaining the court's approval.
Ah, okay. So not punishment exactly, but a legal roadblock. They locked the door in New Jersey unless a judge explicitly let them back in.
Precisely. And that 2022 bar, that was the catalyst. That's what set the stage for the 2025 endgame. Because they were blocked in New Jersey, they pivoted. They engaged in what lawyers call forum shopping, basically, looking for a more favorable court. So they took the fight to California, a whole new state, and crucially, they reframed the whole thing. It wasn't strictly a paternity case anymore. It became about civil claims fraud, emotional distress allegedly caused by how the previous litigation was handled.
Whoa, okay, that's a totally different angle. So they stopped asking, is he the dad? And started asking, did his lawyers cause us harm by fighting the paternity case so hard?
That's the essence of it.
Yeah.
And they came at him with two separate lawsuits in California in 2025. First, Rymir Satterthwaite himself filed a federal lawsuit. This one alleged fraud, manipulation, and intimidation. He was seeking damages for emotional distress. And it included this really dramatic, frankly shocking claim that his car had been shot 6 times at some point, which he interpreted as, an attempt to silence him.
Wow. Okay, that's intense. Does that kind of thing happen often in these high-profile celebrity cases, where the claims just escalate into something almost conspiratorial?
It can, yes. When a legal fight becomes such a public spectacle, the emotional pressure is immense. Sometimes plaintiffs will use these really extreme allegations, partly maybe because they believe them, but also strategically perhaps to shape public opinion and increase pressure on the other side. It blurs the line between legal strategy and PR.
Okay, so that was Rymir's federal suit. What about the second one? You said Lillie Coley filed one too.
Yes, and Coley's case, filed in California state court, turned out to be the decisive one. Her suit alleged deceit by concealment and intentional infliction of emotional distress, but focused on the harm she allegedly suffered as Rymir's advocate and godmother. And it was this state-level case that ultimately triggered the final legal checkmate for Carter's defense team.
All right, let's get to that ending. We're calling this part Chess, Not Checkers versus With Prejudice. How did this thing finally actually end? Permanently?
Well, the resolution actually happened in 2 steps. First, back in July 2025, Rymir Satterthwaite voluntarily withdrew his own federal lawsuit.
Right, and he immediately spun that, didn't he? Insisted it wasn't a defeat, but some kind of strategic move. He made a point of saying publicly he hadn't gotten a DNA test, hadn't settled, and framed it like, you have to play chess, not checkers. Trying to keep the narrative alive, maybe.
Exactly. It allowed him to maintain his public stance, that the fight wasn't over. But the real legal death blow came a few months later, November 2025. That's when the judge ruled on Lillie Coley's parallel state case. And this time, it wasn't voluntary. This was an involuntary dismissal, a clear win for Carter.
And the key weapon the defense used was California's anti-SLAPP law, right? Anti-SLAPP. That stands for Strategic Lawsuits Against Public Participation.
That's correct. And the irony here, when you synthesize the sources, is pretty striking. Anti-SLAPP laws were originally created to protect, the little guy. Think journalists, activists, ordinary citizens speaking out on public issues, to stop them from being silenced by lawsuits from powerful corporations or individuals.
So wait, Carter's team managed to use a law designed to protect the less powerful, to field one of the wealthiest, most powerful celebrities on the planet. How did they argue that successfully?
It's fascinating. Legally, they argued that Coley's lawsuit, the one claiming emotional distress and fraud, was fundamentally aimed at stopping Carter's legally protected activities. Specifically, his right to defend himself in court and his right to publicly deny the paternity claims. Activities related to his right to petition the government, essentially. The court agreed. It found that Coley's suit was effectively trying to punish Carter for defending himself, thereby chilling his constitutional rights. It validated the defense's claim that her suit was the harassing one.
Wow. Okay, so just to make sure I've got this straight. They moved to California, claiming Carter committed fraud on the courts, but their case got tossed because it was seen as attacking Carter's right to use the courts. That was the checkmate.
That is the absolute core of the legal checkmate, a brilliant defensive move. And the judge didn't just dismiss it. The dismissal was with prejudice.
Okay, that phrase sounds final. For listeners, what does with prejudice mean in lawyer speak?
It means it's over. Done. Finished. That specific claim cannot be brought back, cannot be refiled in any court ever again. It extinguishes the legal right to pursue that particular issue. The judge also explicitly stated that allowing Coley to try and amend her complaint would be futile, basically saying there was no way to fix it. The door is legally bolted shut.
So after more than a decade, that central question paternity is still technically unanswered in public, like with a test result, but the legal path to force an answer, that's now permanently blocked by this ruling. But you mentioned it's not quite over. There's still some legal fallout happening.
That's right. The fight isn't about paternity anymore. It's shifted entirely to the consequences of the failed lawsuit. Carter's legal team is now actively pursuing sanctions against Lillie Coley. They're basically asking the court to make her pay their legal fees and cost for having to defend against what the court agreed was essentially a harassing lawsuit.
Oof. So not only did she lose, but she might actually end up having to pay Carter's legal bills for the case she brought. That's adding insult to injury, financially speaking.
It's a significant risk, absolutely. And it sends a powerful message, acting as a deterrent. Coley, however, is still pushing back, it seems. She filed what's called a motion for reconsideration, essentially asking the same judge to take another look at the ruling, arguing the court overlooked key facts, particularly from the previous New Jersey proceedings.
Motions for reconsideration, those are usually long shots, aren't they? Kind of a last-ditch effort.
Very much so. It's like asking the referee to review the final whistle. Statistically, they're rarely granted. So the reality is the 2025 California strategy failed definitively. The civil suits are gone, dismissed with prejudice. And that core paternity question is now, from a legal standpoint, unanswerable because the path to compel an answer is closed.
Man, what a saga. If you find these kinds of Hollywood legal showdowns and the power dynamics in the music world as fascinating as we do, make sure you hit that subscribe button for Starscope Report. You won't want to miss what we dig into next week.
And maybe just one final thought to leave you with.
Yeah.
Consider the anti-SLAPP statute's role here. It ended up protecting Shawn Carter's ability to publicly deny these claims for years without facing lawsuits for, say, emotional distress caused by those denials. When defending your reputation legally becomes a protected act itself, especially for someone incredibly famous and powerful. Well, it raises interesting questions, doesn't it?
Right.
How does the public ever really find the truth when narratives clash so fiercely within these legal shields? Something to think about.
You've been listening to Starscope Report, where we uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.